Right, okay, so what we're going to do is I've set a couple of laps. I set a lap on, I've done a couple of laps in this car just to get a decent lap in. But we've got the Porsche GTE here. Unsure why it's not loaded the Northern Lights livery, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. But so we've done a lap in the Porsche GTE, and I've also done a lap in the Ferrari GTE, which I'll upload on a separate video. The session info is, I think the track temperature. I think the track temperature is 72 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's roughly what the first race is going to be, there or thereabouts. The second race is usually hotter. The third race is usually around this temperature as well. So at some point, this will be the temperature. And I'm just going to show you a lap of Interlagos in the Porsche GTE. So I'll just let it run through first. I'll keep all the display up and the overheads. And the throttle inputs and stuff like that. So we'll just keep that on. We'll just run through a lap and we'll just let it unfold as it goes. And then when we get to the end of the lap, we'll just go bit by bit to see exactly what we're doing. So we'll just let it run. Okay, so that's a lap. We've done a 128.0 there. So and we are running race fuel as well, by the way. So that's a race fuel lap in these temperatures. So we'll just go back and see exactly what we did. So to start the lap, what I tend to do is I tend to go wide and use the entire right-hand side of the track here because it's a bit like an oval in how I see it, as in when you're coming off the top bank of the oval. When you go down the hill off the top bank, you tend to get a lot more speed down the straight. So that's what I tend to do here. Whether it works or not is another thing, but that's just I do tend to do that to start a lap off because I get a bit more speed down the straights. So that's why I'm running quite wide. So my brake markup would be, so we're braking just about 75 meters in. So we're just there. So we're in between, yeah, so we're about 75 meters, so before the 50, well after the 100-meter board. And we are, that's exactly where we're braking there. So let's just have a quick look at that again. Slow it down. So yeah, we're right in the middle there. So we're half on the brake, probably about 55% on the brake. We're bleeding off slightly because we don't want to lock up the wheels. Got a slight lock up on the left there, so I've lifted off slightly and then just got it down to 65 odd miles an hour, and we're trail braking a little bit, and then we're back on the gas as soon as we hit that curb. There's a slight lift there. I don't know if you see that. That was just there. I had a slight lift because I was just carrying a bit too much speed going into the second quarter there. just to make sure we didn't understeer off into turn 3, because that really messes up the straight. So little lift, back on the gas, and then full chap up to turn 4. This one can be really tricky coming up to here, because if you miss your braking point and go wide, it does give you a very easy 1x. So our braking marker for this one is, where are we? I believe it's the 100-meter board there where the green hut is. So we slow it down. Yep, so we just passed the green hut there, and that's where we, no, not rear chase, sorry. We want, where are we? Chase. So there's the 100-meter board up there, and we brake just on the 100-meter board just after. We're, again, not fully on the brake, never really are in these because these don't have ABS, so we're just, you can see we're trail braking slightly as well going in. I carried a little bit too much speed, so we're trail braking slightly here still. I carried a little bit too much speed, I was on the gas a bit too early, realised it quickly, lifted off again, and then back on the throttle once we touched that curb. Not fully on the throttle though, because if you're fully on the throttle on that curb, it will spit you off. So you can see as soon as I get off that curb, I'm fully on the throttle now. So, but careful of the right hand side here, because that is a very easy 1x there. We'll go back in the cockpit view. Now your brake marker for this one, again, this is, I'm just talking about the Porsche GTE here. So the brake marker here is this green hut, just on the left hand side here. Obviously use your peripheral vision to brake. Don't look at the green hut while braking, because as you're, if you look at the green hut while braking, you're going to miss your apex. So just use your peripheral vision to see. That's when I start braking there, where the green hut is. Slow it down. There is the green hut. So as soon as it's in my left hand side window there, where my mirror is, there you go, I start braking as soon as it's on top of my mirror, and as I brake I give it a little bit of a turn on the steering wheel, and I've realised I've had to correct it a little bit. So I was on the brake, and then I had a correction, so I was off the brake there, and then back on the brake again once I realised I got under control. Now we'll run through this. So my throttle control's a bit all over the place on that one. I could have been a lot smoother on the throttle control going through here. But we're turning in when we've hit the green hut. I turn in a little bit too early, but we keep it as tight as you can go. You kind of want to avoid braking at this particular point, because it can loosen the rear up, and keep it nice and tight in third gear, and we're back into real tight twisty section. 20 to 25% of the brake. I overshot the apex slightly, and slight trail braking there, trying to get the front turned in slightly, the left-hander. So we're on the brakes ever so slightly just to get the front turned in a little bit. And once we realise we've got enough grip, you can really get on the power early on this corner, because it's quite a bit of camber on this corner. So quite a bit of steering lock there actually, probably a bit too much. So we're already back on the throttle. Look, so we're back on the throttle. Can we go any higher than this? So look how much corner we got left here. So we are, from here we're on the brake. We've got all this round here, and it looks really tight. It looks like if you're going to get on the throttle early, you're going to go straight on, but you really don't. So we're off the throttle completely, and now we're on it, and that really does swing you around, because as soon as you hit this part of the track here, it's almost like a banked curve. So it's good to get on the throttle early there. This one's really tricky because you can easily lock up, and I think I do. And if you see these lights just on the dashboard on the right hand side, just above the steering wheel, if they turn purple, that means I've locked up. And we'll just slow it down. So we're on the brake, 45%. There we go. There's the lock up. But straight away, as soon as I see that lock up, I'm off the brake to make sure we don't understeer off. Because as soon as you start getting a bit of lock up, so locked up, I'm off the brakes, stop locking up, and then I believe we get on the brakes a little bit again. There we go. Just a tad, that really helps. And getting on the gas here is, you can get on the gas so early on this one. There's so much grip, and it gets quite wide, let's say. So we're on the gas already as we hit the curb, and use all the curb on the left hand side. Don't worry about getting a big swing. Don't worry about switching over to the right hand side of the track here, because there is a lot of grip on the inside here. You can in these temperatures you can anyway, and it just pulls you around. Use every last bit of over the white line here. You don't get a 1x for it. Use every last bit of it as much as you can. My turning point is this grey area just in front of us after this brown bit of curb. So there is where I start turning. You can't see, it's very hard to see the curb as well. You can't really see it there. You can't see the apex. But you start turning in at that grey part there, and then it's full tilt up to the start and finish line. And obviously take as tight line as you can, hug the wall to minimise your lap time. And that's the Porsche GTE. And I tell you what we're going to do is we're going to load the replay up straight away for the Porsche. Why has it done that? Sign me out. For the Ferrari GTE. So we're going to load that one up straight away while we're on the same recording. So we don't have to do two separate videos, because that will be naff. So let's just go straight to this one, and we'll look at the lap time. So with the Ferrari session, I loaded up a different session, obviously, because you can't run two cars in one session. I got the temperature relatively the same when we went out of the pit lane to start our out lap, and then the temperatures rose by about 4 degrees. So we ended up setting this lap time on 75 degrees, I believe it was, track temperature. So the track wasn't as grippy, but it still was quite grippy, but not as good. And this Ferrari is not a car that I drive, so I'm not massively confident in it. So the lap time was a little bit slower. So I think this lap time...
1 gallon left.
Let's have a look. We haven't got 1 gallon left at all. We've got full fuel here. Race fuel. So the info, so actually the track temperature was 77, so it's 6 degrees hotter than the Porsche lap you've just seen. So this lap will be a bit slower based because of that. And obviously I'm not used to this car, I don't drive this Ferrari, but we'll run through this lap. Okay, so that lap was a 128.5. So yeah, we are 0.5 of a second slower than the last lap that we done in the Porsche, but that's not a problem. So we'll just run through this now, and the gears we're using in this is a bit different because the gear ratios have been set slightly different in the settings. The setup I've got bolted on here. So again, anyway, we're running up to the first corner, and again, I think we brake a little bit later than the Porsche actually in this car. And there we start braking. So we're about the 70-meter mark, and we're a bit harder on the brakes this time. We're about 65 to 70%, and we're bleeding off slightly. Don't want to lock those wheels up. Still not off the brakes, still not off the brakes. Turning in slightly on the brakes, still on the brakes. As soon as we touch that curb, we're off the brakes, because you don't want to be braking while on that curb. Straight onto the throttle, half throttle, 75%, and then 100%. And I bleed off the throttle again here, I believe. I do, but I do make a mistake. I take too much curb. So that's too much curb. That can and that ruined my exit speed. So we hit the curb too hard, and then I had to adjust the steering there, which is poor. So don't get on that curb too much, because that's exactly what will happen. So, but it didn't hamper us too much. So it's probably a 10th loss there, but not too bad. So hammering up to turn 4 now. Again, 100-meter mark is where I brake. So we'll just slow that down again. There, actually, we're a little bit late. So this Ferrari, I think I proved actually you can brake a little bit late with this Ferrari. But I could anyway. The Porsche does tend to lock up a lot easier. I have found this is a lot more stable through the corners, this car. The first thing I found was how stable it felt. But I just don't get on with the car, to be honest. I'm not overly keen on it. I sort of fell in love with the Porsche, but anyway, so we're 50% on the brake here, and as we get up to the curb, we make sure we're off the brakes before we touch that curb, and on the throttle, fully on the throttle pretty much, on the last part of the apex there. Just be careful again on here, because that is a 1X, it's horrible there. So again, use this heart on the left for your braking points. So when it gets into view on the left-hand side of your window here, you'll start to brake now there. And again, initially we were on the brake quite hard there. So we're just over 50%, and then we bleed off straight away. So we take a lot of the speed out with the initial pump of the brake, let's say. And then as you start turning in, just a little bit of trail braking there. You don't want to be hard on the brakes, and then straight on the gas. And I believe we hit this curve and just lifted off slightly because we hit the curve a bit too hard there. So we've hit the curve a little bit too hard there, so we had to lift off slightly. So, but try and keep it tight through here as much as you can, because if you go wide, yes, it'll probably give you a better swing through there, but it does lose you time, I found. So keep it here. That will stop someone diving up the inside here as well. Stop silly accidents. Again, I think I hit that curve just a bit too hard. You can see it's not the best view. I must admit, I don't race in this view. I race in VR, so it's very difficult to set the camera correctly. So it is probably, the field of view isn't great. Anyway, we're on the brakes. Let's just speed that up so we can get the full speed there. So we're on the brakes quite late, but as we're braking and turning, so it's amazing how much stability that car's got actually through there. So we're on the brakes all the way through here, and still on the brakes all the way through, so it's quite amazing how much grip this car's got. Now, we're in first gear. Unlike the Porsche, we were in second gear around here. We have to drop to first gear in this Ferrari because the gear ratios are a bit longer, I think. So we drop to first gear, try and get tight, and then keep tight on this as much as you can, and then power through in the last half of that corner there. Third gear, and I believe we go down at first again. And again, we're on the throttle nice and early for this corner, so we are braking as we're turning. Where do we brake? There. So we don't brake quite while we're turning. We get through this corner slightly here. I call that a corner. I'm not sure it is called. I'm not sure it is classed as a corner actually, but we get through there. We straighten the wheel up slightly, and then we start braking as we straighten the wheel up. And then as we're turning in, we bleed off the brakes. Hit that curve. We've got a lot of lock on the steering wheel here, on the throttle. And now 75, 80% on the throttle. Now we're going to be fully on the throttle when we straighten the wheel up slightly there. And then we drift out to the left-hand side. Took a lot more wider approach to the corner as opposed to like I did with the Porsche, but I think it's because I made a mistake coming out of the corner and I corrected the steering wheel there, which made the back end come out, made me push me out to the right-hand side a little bit more than I wanted to. full chap through here, and again, obviously use as much of this as you can on the right hand side. I mean, literally, I've got all four wheels off the racing track here, but there you go. There's that grey bit turning in. I've turned in a little bit too early here, lifted off the throttle so we don't completely understeer off, back on the throttle again, and then fully up to speed, taking a nice tight line onto the pit straight. And I believe it was a lap time of 1:28.5, I think it was, so it weren't too bad. But again, those 2 laps were on race fuel. I say race fuel, what's that, about 12 gallons-ish, something like that. So there we go. Yeah, those are 2 different laps. Again, I don't have a setup for this car, so I've just put a setup that I knew worked okay on it. That was that. So actually the track temperature decreased to 75 to the end of that lap. So yeah, so there we go. That is a couple of laps on the GTE Porsche and the GTE Ferrari. Again, I'm no whiz kid at this. I'm really not, but I just thought it was quite interesting to see what the difference is between the 2 cars, with relatively the same weather settings and the same fuel. Anyway, hope that helps anyone. If it doesn't, I hope in a way it makes you slower because I want to beat you. Anyway, I'm only joking.